Some of you might have seen this community post before where I asked y'all, would you believe me when I tell you that Rhino's passive is actually insane? It's not your fault of saying no, because I used to be like you all. Yes, it is undeniable that Rhino's passive is very weak, but that's because it lacks one thing to push it from D tier to A- tier, or even borderline S tier when conditions and situations ask for it. Before that, let's set the stage first. Mag has a passive of 8 meter auto loot pickup. While that seems nice, it is unstackable with other loot pickup mods, and it will notify this passive completely upon using those mods. Like Mag, Rhino's passive is essentially a mod made into a passive, which is heavy impact, with wider radius of 8 meter, but also a consistency issue. Have you found the clue now? Let me know in the comments if you are desired to do so. Mag's passive is unstackable with similar mods, and it seems like Rhino's passive shouldn't as well, right? I used to think it like that and thought Rhino's passive will just override it, but oh man, am I so wrong about it. Sorry Rhino passive, I was not familiar with your game. Rhino's passive works like you used to think of it without heavy impact. But with heavy impact modded in your Exciter slot, not only the consistency issue is completely removed, the 8 meter radius becomes 14 meters at base as it stacks with Rhino passive. This shit was even in the wiki page of heavy impact mod, but not like anyone will even search for this mod lol. Anyways, with the buff passive, Rhino now had a spammable, completely free 14 meter crowd control that will knock enemies down and make enemies easier to headshot as well due to exposed head. With this in mind, it alone isn't enough to be considered insane, but do you remember Piercing Roar? It allows you to knock enemies within 25 meters of you down upon casting Roar, giving them 5 puncture procs in the meantime, and produce knockdown and puncture status consistently in a very wide radius. And yeah, Rhino's passive is considered as a knockdown status, which increase your damage via CO. Also, if you know knockdown, it opens up enemy to ground finishers, which deals the most damage out of all finisher builds due to it having the highest base multiplier, and it is also true damage like all finishers. But it's quite uncommon to trigger as it requires knockdown, while the duration of them open up for a ground finisher is brief, but if you had something to prolong it... And yes, has to be Rhino Storm again. Due to the nature of Rhino Storm having a staggering 3 different CC property, the tumble, the slow, and the get up animation. Rhino Storm and Knockdown shares that get up animation, and the tumble is notified by set animation, leaving only slow being applied to the animation, and thus having something like this. But as all good things comes, it tends to have downsides, and it being hard focused on needing hard landings, and to consistently triggers it, you need a room that is greater than 10 meters tall, and it also have a line of sight requirement that cannot bypass terrain on its 14 meter radius CC. Knockdown as a status is also easily cancelled by majority of the CC types, which affects the potential of set method. Despite the downsides, this alone still opens up a lot of synergy that Rhino is previously capable of, with now potentially better modding flexibility since it can offload set tasks from Piercing Roar without using it at all times, and more energy gain methods due to constant recast and occasional use of Rhino Storm to prolong it. Which leads us to Melee Crescendo. Melee Crescendo allows permanent combo gain per enemy when they are killed by finisher attacks and not by the slash procs caused by finisher attacks, up until 220 aka 12 times. With how spammable this 14 meter knockdown radius is, This opens up focus school and not hard locking it to Vaseline only. Rhino is also capable of enhancing melees via Rifle Advance and Raw. It should be no problem building melee crescendo if you use it for missions like Disruption. But still, you don't come here to just hear me yap, right? Since now Rhino can do finishers like nothing, Warframe Arcanes that had a similar trigger requirement like Arcane Trickery is now extremely viable on Rhino, as it gives you 50% chance to go invisible. It should be easy to maintain due to the ease of opening enemies up to finisher. Not only Rhino is capable of not taking damage at all, now Rhino is also invisible. Like, guess we don't have enough survivability methods on Rhino? You could just use Rifle Advance with Raw on Rhino and do a finisher only solo mission if you wish to have some damn fun. Oh, you thought I'm done? Have you heard of Mark for Death Rhino or M4D Rhino? M4D is an ability that comes with the helmet system. With suitable frames, it can definitely shine, especially on the hands of Rhino. Upon triggering M4D, targets take X damage and then calculate all the existing reductions like armor and bonuses like viral, magnetic and more, and then deal that damage to enemy around base 10 meters. With a pretty strict line of sight requirement on its AoE and its inability to deal more damage than the marked target's current maximum health, which is extremely detrimental for others, but not for Rhino, as he can just brute force it. Raw dips once on the direct hit of set damage, dips twice on the AoE that is caused by that damage, and if that AoE spreads any DOTs, it will dip thrice. Very typical Rhino moment, I would say. Anyways, with weapons that can force a slash on ground finisher, this can be a very powerful build that you can occasionally have fun with, and this can easily scale into level cap if you are into endurance solo mission, I guess. I'm up all night. And so that's probably the majority of the practical use case of Rhino's buff passive, as it is just a partial of Piercing Roar, which means that many things that Piercing Roar does, Rhino's passive can do it as well, albeit weaker but more mobile and cheap. In conclusion, the buff passive is only situationally insane, thus why probably at max A- tier when you consider its normal use, but borderline S tier if you purposely set your melees up and make great use of this passive, and it opens up a lot of possibility for your builds like melee crescendo, finisher setup, and so on. That's why I said, if I was to tell you that Rhino's passive is pretty insane now, would you believe me? Do you believe me now after all what I have shown? That's up to you to decide. But anyways, I had to stop my project for a bit to make this video. Gotta go back again soon. Worry not, it should be out in a week or at max 2. See you all next time. Goodbye.